like to tell you about our mental health strategy and share with you a couple of examples of that strategy in action, so you've got some tangibles to think about. So just starting with that strategy, a few different objectives around it, and as we've heard this morning, it's all about reducing the stigma around mental health, getting people talking about it. We're trying to be bold. We want to be leading in our sector around this. It's important to us to make sure that we've signposted the support that's available to people in the organisation around mental health, so people know where they can go to talk. We use diversity network groups, which I'll tell you about, and we're using them as an entree into mental health issues and a support network too. We're trying to improve our competence in relation to mental health globally, although to be honest with you, right now we're not advanced globally. We've mainly done our work in the UK, so global is the next phase of our work. And then we're looking outwards as well as inwards. So as well as trying to make Pinsent Masons a place where people can be open about mental health issues, we're engaging with partner schools, charities, suppliers, so thinking about outside the organisation, how we can help others and also receive their help. So let me give you a few examples of these strategies in action. One of the early things we did, people sometimes say to me, well, when did it start? When did Pinsent Masons start thinking about mental health? When did you launch a strategy? And there's two ways of looking at that. And the truth is, this issue has been around for a long time. And this issue has been particularly prevalent in the legal sector. And I noticed a couple of law firms were here today. Now, why is that? Now, the statistics show that students studying law at university are twice as likely to suffer from stress and depression as medical students. Now, so it's not necessarily the work that's doing that. It's something about the psychological makeup of people who are attracted to law as a discipline, something about maybe their risk aversion, something about their attention to detail, something about their quest for perfection, other things too maybe. So we know that people in legal sector are particularly prevalent to this. They're at high risk. And so some time ago, we started the conversation going, and a great way of doing it was to have Johnny Benjamin, who will be known to many of you, the stranger on the train, the stranger on the bridge rather, and Neil Laban, the man who saved Johnny, who stopped him from jumping off Waterloo Bridge, and who later got together, and Lorraine will know them well, they've been working on the Heads Together campaign. Johnny came and spoke in our auditorium, and he told his story, and Neil told the story from his perspective. Enormously powerful, the room was silent. Actually, there were very few dry eyes in that room, which is quite unusual for an auditorium that generally gives legal lectures. Generally, the eyes are pretty dry in that room, I have to say. On this occasion, they weren't. And I noticed every single seat was taken, both in that room and on our video conference to our offices around the UK. And it was clear we'd struck a chord. It was clear this was something of great interest to our people. So we built from that, put plans in place, and we had a strategy launch this year. And our managing partner, global managing partner, John Cleland, gave the intro to that. He talked about how important it is to him. I talked about it, and this was really built up ahead of steam. In advance of the strategy launch, we have developed a network of mental health champions. Now, we thought about calling them first aiders. We decided we're not going to put that label on. That label's not quite the right label for us. It might suggest that they're able to do something they're not. So our mental health champions are people who signpost where the support is. Michaela talked about Bupa. Yes, we have similar providers providing expert service. So the mental health champions are pointing people to the experts. They're pointing to people in HR. They're pointing to people in Unum or other suppliers. They're a listening voice. They're a positive presence. They're visible. They wear a mental health lanyard showing that they're interested in the subject. So it's someone who will listen without judgment if someone has a mental health issue they want to talk about. And they've been very helpful in rolling out our programme. I mentioned that we have diversity network groups. Well, we know that people in minority groups have particular mental health issues. So we know, for example, that people who report as being LGBT are at higher risk in some areas. So we've done some particular work with our LGBT group to focus on that and give some expert support. Through our family group, we've focused on how can we help those people at Pinsent Masons who are parents or carers, how can we help them develop the mental health of their children. So we've had child experts come in, and as a father of 3 children myself, I'm personally particularly interested in how can I create a healthy environment in the home for my children? How can I help my children develop good habits and be resilient, which will help them in the long term in life? So it's sort of spreading good practice from the word go. So that's been an entree for some of our mental health work. I mentioned we look outwards. So we have a number of partner schools, and we ran an event a fortnight ago called an Inclusive Schools Conference at Pinson Masons in London, and we had schools, our partner schools from Birmingham, from Belfast, from Leeds and from London come in, and we helped the teachers there. We brought in some experts, and we helped the teachers think about how they can create a mentally healthy environment in their schools. And this is a massive issue for schools. Those of you who've worked at schools or have children at schools will know there's enormous mental health issues across schools. So we think if we can be a fulcrum, if we can bring in experts to help advisors in school, again, it's sharing good practice, sharing good ideas, helping the school teachers get access to the expertise which they might not otherwise have. So we brought in some experts from Leeds Beckett University to help those school teachers on that, and we'll be carrying on with this. So our motto is inspiring young lives, and helping people with mental health is part of that. So then we come to This Is Me. So we know from our work in other areas of diversity, many years ago we signed up to the Stonewall Workplace Equality Index, be known to some of you. So it's a measurement of the top 100 gay-friendly employers in the UK. We were the first law firm to be on that index. What's so useful about it is that it measures how well you do against the standard, and then it gives you the action plan for the next year. And we think the same is happening with standards like this. It's a good measure. By signing a pledge and by measuring how you're doing against best practice in other organisations, it helps show you where your gaps are that you need to fulfil. The This Is Me campaign, I've been asked to say a few more words about that. So we signed up over a year ago, and we've made some good progress in different parts of the UK. So in Scotland, we're involved in the launch that's forthcoming that Lord Mayor mentioned. But actually, we've been working in Scotland on this for a year. So we formed a core committee working with clients and suppliers. We had a regular series of small events. We got people talking about their own experiences. We've used social media campaigns. We've found that's really useful to get the word out. And we've got social media guidelines we've got access to. So we're helping the other people in the core group get access to that expertise on how to use social media in the most impactful way. We've used high profile, so for example in the Northwest we've got a Liverpool launch that's happening shortly, so Everton Football Club are involved in that. Everton Football Club have been absolutely tremendous on this, and it's so impressive to see how a football club has engaged on the issue and recognises, because also we know in the game of football, there's many examples in the media, a lot of high profile footballers, highly paid, very stressful environment, performing in front of vast audiences. A lot of footballers suffer with mental health issues. Everton Football Club have really engaged with that and looked at that. And we think it's so powerful. We know that people care about what football clubs are saying and thinking they're a powerful influencer in the community. So by teaming up with Everton Football Club, we're getting the word out, and we think that's quite impactful. Perhaps the single most useful thing I think we've done as part of This Is Me is a searingly honest film that we've created with some of our leaders. Now, these are people, if you think of the old days, the bad old days, in the legal profession, saying you had a mental health issue was a sort of career suicide. You were showing that you weren't robust, you were showing that you weren't resilient, you were showing that you had a fatal weakness, you were showing that perhaps you weren't suitable to be promoted to partnership and a senior leadership position. It's such a unhealthy message to have, to think that it's showing weakness. We've really tried to move this dial. You don't do it overnight, of course, it takes a period of time. What we're trying to show is actually the best leaders, the best potential future leaders are people who are honest about the issues that they face, have these issues, who deal with them, seek help, overcome them, and move forward. And so we've got a very high-profile partner in Birmingham, a high-profile partner in Manchester, who are very respected people in their offices and in their communities, and are probably destined for senior management positions in Pinsent Masons globally. And they've spoken on this film, perhaps for the first time ever, about their own mental health problems and how they've dealt with them. And people are blown away by that. Junior people see that. They see really respected people talking so honestly about this, and they're truly inspired. And it's one of the most powerful things we've done through This Is Me. And so if it was only to give one piece of advice to people in the room, I would say, get your most respected people, either your senior people or your people who are known to be destined for the top. And I guarantee that you will find people in that group who have mental health issues, either their own, their families. And if you can get them, they take a bit of encouragement, but if you can get them to be honest and to talk and to be public, it has such an impactful effect. And then final example I wanted to share, I talked a little bit about clients. And again, in the legal sector, and it's perhaps true of many sectors, most of us have clients, most of us have suppliers. And the fact is that in the legal sector, it's well known that law firms are working to tight deadlines, they're working under pressure, and people who use global corporate law firms are paying a fee for that service, and it's not cheap, and so their expectations are great. And so it's hardly surprising that lawyers feel under pressure when they're receiving instructions from their clients. Barclays came to us. Barclays, a very important client of Pinsent Masons, and said, we'd like to talk to you about mental health. We'd like to work with you on mental health. What can we do about it? And we said, look, we'd like to get really practical on this. We'd like to get to a level of detail. And because the brutal truth is that unwittingly, Barclays, perhaps every such client, it's not just a Barclays thing, it's a client thing, cause stress unwittingly by the way they act. And I'll give you an example. It's very typical for a client of Pinsent Masons to send an email at about 5 p.m. on a Friday evening to say, we'd like a 200-page loan documentation, please, a loan document on a 100 million loan that we're arranging next week. And so the legal team get this at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, and they think, gulp. That theatre trip I planned for this evening, or that day out I planned for tomorrow, have to put that on hold because Barclays are asking for this. Barclays are a key client of the firm. So let's get the team back in on Saturday morning. Let's get the team working on Friday night. Let's get the team do it remotely over the weekend. And all these lawyers sit down and destroy their weekends doing this work, and they make sure it's on the key client's desk by 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. And then they discover the key client doesn't look at it until Wednesday. And of course, what's happened is the lawyers haven't queried the deadline and the client hasn't stated the deadline. So there's this assumption that it's urgent. Now, of course, some things are truly urgent, but often they're not. And so we said to Barclays, if we can just observe some simple, very simple rules of respect on both sides, greater clarity about deadlines and urgency and when something's required, who needs to do it, etc., we can make vast steps. Now, Barclays has been brilliant on this, and of course, like many clients, there's some stress which is almost unavoidable, and there's some stress which is entirely avoidable. And once we were able to identify the bits that were avoidable, we've developed this chart, and we call it a mindful business charter. And Pinsent Masons have worked with another law firm, Adelshaw Goddard's, who also work with Barclays. And so this is going to be rolled out. There's a launch event next week, so it'll become public next week. It's going to be rolled out across several banking clients. Now, I've been talking to people in other sectors, in the nuclear sector, in creative work, and a lot of other people say to me, wow, it's so true in our sector as well. So I think we will see this go global. We will see this go across a range of sectors. And all we're talking about really is common sense. All we're talking about is just basic communication and people being clear on both sides. But everyone in this room knows, we'll be able to mention at least one occasion where common sense, a little bit of common sense, a little bit of clarity would have really helped you in the work you've done. So it's about common sense and it's about helping people. So that's all I'd want to say, apart from to say that we want to carry on this conversation. We want to carry it on internally and externally. So I welcome any follow-up questions later or after the event. Our next stage in our journey is to take this from national to more international. So again, I value the feedback or ideas of anyone else has got. So that's all for me for now. Thanks very much.